It's the summer of 1999. School is out, and you've spent the day biking around the neighborhood with your friends. To relax at the end of a fun day, you turn on your TV with the familiar crackle and static, plug in your favorite cartridge into the family N64, and load up your new favorite game, Ocarina of Time. I'm sure many people have fond memories of coming home from school to put a few hours into exploring every corner of the map. But we're now 27 years later after release. Time has passed. New games have come and gone, and new consoles have come and gone. Is this game still the cherished must-play everyone remembers it as, or is it more of a historical footnote? The game starts off by introducing us to the Deku Tree. He summons Navi the fairy to his side and tells her that time is short. He senses the evil presence coming to conquer Hyrule. The Kokiri Forest has stood as a barrier to any evil that beset Hyrule, but this coming evil is greater than anything they have ever faced, and is greater than the Deku Tree himself. The Deku Tree tells Navi that it is time for Link's journey to begin, and that Navi is to find him and guide him. Navi has to hurry though, as the Deku Tree does not have much time left. After some truly amazing camera work for 1998, Navi then unites with our hero Stumblo. Navi wakes Stumblo up, introduces herself, and then urges Stumblo to go meet the Great Deku Tree. After leaving the house, we meet Saria. She calls to us, so we head down to talk to her. She remarks on us finally getting our own fairy, stating that we are a true Kokiri now. With that, the training wheels are well and truly off as the game fully begins. Reflecting on the opening here, I think it is fantastically done. The game starts off by laying out the issues you are facing. You know that the Deku Tree is the protector of the land, but that something has gone wrong and he can no longer fulfill his role. We know that Stumblo is fated to go on a heroic journey and that the Deku Tree is kickstarting that journey now. We are introduced to Navi as our companion and the helper of the Great Deku Tree. While the game is giving us glimpses of the coming story by telling of the coming evil, we're not bogged down by 5 hours of exposition, unlike some games. As well, the game leaves you to figure things out on your own. You are not told how to move. You are not told what each button press does. You are not given a 5-hour tutorial on the controls. Instead, the game wants you to poke at things and see what they do. However, the inquisitive player can find all the tutorial they could ever want. Around the map are signs and characters to talk to that tell you how to do certain actions. So, you can ignore everything if you so choose and figure it out on your own. Or, you can take the time, explore, and uncover all of the signs and dialogue that tell you what all the actions are. This is something so many modern games could take note of, because I don't need to be told E is interact in my 27th game. Alright, long rambling rant over, back to the game. We now have to head to the Great Deku Tree. However, there's a problem. Mido blocks the way and demands that we show him both a sword and shield to prove our worthiness. So we are forced to explore around the Kokiri Forest for the sword, and we have to steal every rupee we can find to buy the shield. But items in hand, Mido walks off and we go to meet the Great Deku Tree. There he relates a bit of the backstory to us, warning us of the coming evil. He remarks that we are able to feel it too, but we must test our courage to break the curse on the Great Deku Tree. With that, we are sent into the Great Deku Tree to sort out its tummy troubles. Inside the Deku Tree, we acquire the slingshot, cut through some webs, kill some spitters, light some torches to solve puzzles, and then come to the boss. Here we fight Queen Goma. We stun her, then slash her eyeball. After enough hits, she flails around and then dies. We get a heart container and then are warped out of the tree's innards. We talk to the Great Deku Tree again. Here he praises us for our courage, then introduces us to the Triforce. Ganon came to the Great Deku Tree seeking the Triforce, but the Deku Tree refused, so Ganon placed a curse on him that would ultimately claim his life. With his last breath, he gives us the Green Stone. This whole section is also well done. First, let's talk about Mido and the item gate. The game here tells you exactly what the goal is. Get to the Great Deku Tree. Players will then get to Mido and quickly learn that they need a sword and shield. However, the game doesn't tell you how to acquire these items. It doesn't hold your hand through this section. Rather, you're dropped in a big open area and left to explore at your own pace. While there are a lot of people to talk to here and a lot of things to uncover, overall there's not so much that players could be lost for hours. Plus, with all the things to learn by talking to people and items to collect around the forest, you feel encouraged to keep exploring and discovering things. Next, I want to talk about the Great Deku Tree dungeon. Firstly, one thing I really appreciated here was the fact that there are no small keys. You didn't have to mess around with unlocking any doors or backtracking for any keys. Instead, the dungeon is very linear and straightforward, so you don't feel overwhelmed. The puzzles, while somewhat challenging, are also simple and logical enough that you're bound to stumble or reason through the solution before long. As well, the boss fight is so spooky and atmospheric that I love it. You build up to it, seeing the cobwebs get thicker and more numerous. Then you enter her lair, but see no one. Looking around, you finally spot her glowing eye on the ceiling, an eye that has been watching you this whole time. To echo the Great Deku Tree, you must really test your courage in this dungeon. The big spiders that dangle from the ceiling you have to approach to kill. Queen Goma, likewise, you cannot beat without letting her approach you. And one thing I really appreciate is the devs stayed consistent with this theme throughout the game. But we'll get into that in time as well. Finally, the death of the Great Deku Tree. Honestly, I'm pretty torn here. On the one hand, his death is touching. He was the one who reached out to us, who provided us with a fairy, and who told us of our destiny and the necessary backstory. He reveals himself as a protector of the world, and we learn that he sacrificed himself to save the Greenstone from the hands of Ganon. On the other hand, we only have 3 conversations with him, half of which is exposition. So we never really feel a connection to him, as he's just not in the game that much. So on the one hand, I find his death moving, but on the other hand, I'm still left questioning, who are you? Back to the game. With sword and shield and slingshot in hand, we must now leave our friends and the Kokiri forest behind and begin our quest. On the way out, Saria stops us. She tells us that she always knew we were different, but still confirms our friendship with her. She then gives us an ocarina to remember her by. We slowly back away and then leave the Kokiri forest. However, just outside the Kokiri forest, we are stopped again, this time by Rauru the Owl. Here he gives us 5 minutes of dialogue explaining how to use our map. After saying we don't want to hear his rant again, he flaps off and we head towards the castle. In the market, we meet Malin. She tells us that her dad has gone to Hyrule Castle to deliver milk, but hasn't returned. So we head up to the castle. After being spotted by the guard, we talk to Malin again, who gives us an egg. With egg in hand, we head around to the side of the castle. There we have to wait the night. When the egg hatches into a chicken, you said chicken to wake up Mario. He runs off, then we drop his milk delivery into the canal to make a bridge into the castle. Once inside, we skirt around some guards and finally meet up with Zelda. She spies our fairy, then asks us if we're from the forest. She also asks us if we have a greenstone. After confirming, she tells us of a prophetic dream she had of our coming. She then tells us of the Sacred Realm. The legend of the Sacred Realm is as follows. 3 goddesses hid the Triforce somewhere in Hyrule. If someone were to acquire the Triforce, they would have their wishes granted. Because the Triforce does not discern between good and evil wishes, the Temple of Time was built to protect the Triforce. Inside the Temple of Time is the Doorway of Time that seals the Sacred Realm. Zelda's plan is to beat Ganon to the Triforce so that he does not get his wishes granted. To open the Door of Time, we need 3 Sacred Stones and the Ocarina of Time. After telling us this, she invites us to spy on Ganondorf as well. As Ganondorf walks into the throne room to swear allegiance to the king, he turns and gives us the side eye. Zelda then tells us that her father, the king, is indifferent to Ganondorf's evil plight, so Link and Zelda are the only ones who can stop him. She gives us a writ of passage, then sends us on our way to find the next secret stone. On our way out of the courtyard, we meet Impa. She is the sworn protector of Zelda. She believes Zelda's prophetic dreams about Ganondorf, so she teaches us Zelda's lullaby. After hearing the song, she escorts us out of the castle and points us towards Death Mountain for the red gem. She flashbangs us, then our adventure resumes. Reviewing this section, I want to appreciate the work the devs do here on building up Saria. She is introduced to us the moment we leave our house. We can talk to her throughout the Kokiri Forest, and she stops us one last time as we leave the forest. I can appreciate that the devs are trying to give her an emotional connection instead of just throwing her in as the forest sage later. She doesn't feel forced into these sections, rather the relationship feels like a natural friendship. And all this character development and relationship growth really makes the conclusion of Saria's character, of her awakening as a sage but having to leave Link, really bittersweet and a tragically wonderful end to her character. Also, I want to talk about Rauru. While I do appreciate the reference to the town in Zelda 2, I feel like his inclusion was simply to help along younger players who are still struggling with the controls. After all, he stops you here to tell you how to use the map. Except the game already shows you the map while you're in the Kokiri Forest and gives you a map while telling you how to use it in the Great Deku Tree dungeon. His dialogue goes on for way too long, and you can accidentally loop back into the dialogue if you click the wrong option. So though he does fit the whimsical feeling of the game, I wish he had been cut. Another section that I'm torn on is the entrance to Hyrule Castle. Again, on the one hand it fits the whimsical feel of everything, with having to use a chicken to wake the father and using the milk boxes to make a bridge to get in. On the other hand, it definitely feels dated, for lack of a better term. A lot of these older games use puzzles like this, where someone would stand in the doorway, immovable, for years on end, until you got them some mundane item from one room over. While these puzzles work, it pulls me out of the game to see a man sleeping forever, day and night, unable to be wakened until a chicken caws. Next, the Triforce creation. Honestly, if you were to mention the Triforce to the average man on the street, this is probably the cutscene they would think of. And honestly, I can't really find fault in it. The Triforce has been featured in every previous Zelda game by chronological order, but this is the first time we've been given a backstory into its existence. I love the fact that it weaves both mystical and grounded threads together, featuring an ethereal sacred realm, but wishes being granted. We're never given any clue as to what the Triforce pieces are, simply we are told that they were made inadvertently by the goddesses. We're given no backstory, the Triforce pieces simply are, and I'm okay with that. Also, I want to talk about Zelda here. I really appreciate the wisdom and courage that the devs have given Zelda here. While she may not have everything together, she may not have all of the answers, she does see the danger that is coming and does her best to thwart it. And honestly, without her actions, Ganon would have taken over. And honestly, it's just refreshing to see a character like this. She's written as strong, she's written as wise, she's written as intelligent, but the devs never draw special attention to it. It's just simply a fact of the game, and I really appreciate that. Returning to the story, we make our way towards Death Mountain. After giving a soldier a mask and summiting the mountain, we come to Goron Village. Here we see the Gorons struggling from hunger. Ganondorf has blocked off Dodongo's cavern and filled it with Dodongos. Who would have guessed? The Gorons, their food source of rocks from Dodongo's cavern having been cut off, are on the brink of starvation. So we reveal ourselves as a messenger from the royal family by playing Zelda's lullaby. The Goron chief welcomes us in, and explains the depression he is facing. To cheer him up, we must play him a song. So I quickly realize I don't have the song I need, so I walk all the way back to Kokiri Forest, find Saria, talk with her at the entrance to the Forest Temple, learn Saria's song, then walk all the way back to the peak of Death Mountain, while getting stopped by the owl again to tell me how to play music on the ocarina. So we play him Saria's song, he dances his depression away, and we request the red stone. He informs us that we can't have it just yet, but in order to get it, we must clear out Dodongo's cavern for the Gorons. He gives us the Goron bracelet to let us pick up Goron's special crop, then off we go. After throwing the scarce Goron crop at the boulder covering Dodongo's cavern, we head into the dungeon. This dungeon is a bit more complex than the Deku Tree, but again, there are no small keys to worry about. As well, this dungeon builds off of puzzles taught in the Deku Tree, that of lighting torches to open doors, but this time there are timers in place to make you solve them fast. Finally, we come to King Dodongo. This boss is impressive, and he is fearsome as he towers over you. But once you learn the trick to damaging him and learn where to stand as he rolls past you, he goes down. We get our heart piece, warp out of the dungeon, King Darunia tries to crush Link, and we are rewarded with the red stone. Reliving and reviewing this portion, I want to remark on the plight of the Gorons. From a broad sense, you feel for the Gorons. Their food source has been cut off, and they are starving to death. However, it's in the details that issues start to arise with this section. See, if they eat rocks, that begs the question as to why don't they eat other rocks? We learned from a Goron in town that they won't even consider any other rocks simply because the ones in Dodongo Cavern are too delicious. But if you're in a starvation situation, eventually you'd make do with less than stellar food supplies in order to survive. This is like someone starving to death because they can't eat filet mignon every day. Naturally, the counter to this argument is, well, it's a kid's game. But I mean, just because a game or a bit of media is made for kids does not mean it has to be dumb. I mean, The Iron Giant is a kid's movie, and that's a lot deeper and more stressful than you probably remember. All this to say, I wish there were a deeper explanation as to why the Gorons couldn't eat other rocks. Like a statement that Ganondorf cursed all the other rocks to turn to dust if the Gorons tried to eat them. Next to be reviewed is the Dodongo's Cavern. Honestly, I think this is a great dungeon. Not the best, mind you, just a good one. The puzzles in here are simple, yet the devs give no tutorial for them. For example, in the room where you get the compass, inside is nothing but some bomb flowers and some statues. The game doesn't tell you what to do, nor is there any tutorial of any sort. Rather, the devs trust that you will already be exploring and poking everything to see what it does, and that you'll stumble across the solution of bombing the statues on your own. It's a simple puzzle, but you are given a sense of discovery by being allowed to solve it by yourself. As mentioned earlier, this dungeon builds on the torch puzzle, but adding more complications to them in the form of a timer. This is great because the game isn't just throwing information at you that you'll never need again. Rather, puzzles build off of each other logically, helping the player to figure them out on their own. Back to the game, we've acquired 2 stones and are headed for the 3rd. So it's off to Zora's domain. We get into the domain and talk to King Dorsal Fin I. He is morose about the disappearance of his daughter. So we leave him to his depression, complete a diving minigame, head out to Lake Hylia and find a note in a bottle, and head back into Zora's domain and show the note to King Dorsal Fin I. He realizes Ruto is inside Jabu Jabu, takes 3 years to budge aside, then we head back into Zora's domain to catch a fish, then head into Jabu Jabu. After offering the fish to the bigger fish, we get sucked inside the 3rd dungeon. Inside Jabu Jabu, we meet Ruto. She is an insufferable and stuck-up child, but tells us that she did not leave the note. She then says she doesn't care if her father is worried, because she can't leave yet anyway. So we have to carry her throughout the dungeon and use her to solve some puzzles until we find the blue stone. Upon seeing the stone, we chuck her up at it, she grabs it, then gets raptured. A giant Octorok comes down in her place, and we battle our first mini-boss of the game. I've had difficulties with this fight before, trying to stun him and then run behind him in time before he unfreezes and then heads right at you. But after enough hits, he freaks out and dies. We ascend, following Rudo, fight some Jello, then come to the final boss. This is one of the trickier bosses so far, as you can quickly take damage from him, and he has long invulnerability periods. However, we defeat the allied jellyfish, then slash the heart and it dies. We get our heart container, then exit the dungeon. After Rudo flirts with us, she gives us the sapphire on the grounds that we marry her later. Wedding plans made, we now have all 3 sacred stones, so it's time to join up with Zelda and open the door. Wading through this section, I first want to ask the question, who sent the note in the bottle? I've done some research, and the 2 most probable answers were either Princess Rudo or Ganondorf. But neither one sufficiently answers the question. If Princess Rudo sent the letter, one could argue that she is denying sending it due to her arrogance and independence. But if she were desperate enough to send the letter in the first place, then she would have dropped her arrogant facade when you came to rescue her, as she had already acknowledged she needed help. If Ganondorf were the one to write the letter, then why? Ganondorf later admits that he didn't know that you were after the stones until he saw you at the gates while he chased Zelda. At this point in time, his plan is to wait for the pressure he put on the other races to do its work and net him the stones. So why would he write a note telling Link to get the stone if that's not his current plan? And if they didn't write it, then the only other person that could have would be Azora, familiar with Rudo's habits. But if that's the case, then why didn't they tell King Dorsalfin first? No matter which way you slice this, the letter could not have been sent. Yet there it is in all of its plot hole glory. On a more upbeat note though, I want to praise Nintendo for the character of Rudo. I think she is well written, and she truly does come across as both irritating and charming. She's a character you both want to throw into a pit and help across the chasm. And looking at her character development between here and her older self, I genuinely wish Nintendo would still go this hard in the paint on character development in their Zelda games. Finally, I want to shed some more light on the development of the dungeons. The devs did a great job of easing you into the difficulty in this game. In the very first dungeon, the puzzles are simple and there are no locked doors. In the second dungeon, the puzzles get harder and the dungeon itself gets a bit more complex, but there are still no locked doors. In the third dungeon, they finally introduce mini-bosses. The devs wanted to make sure that new players never suffered too much, but rather ensured the player always had the keys they needed to complete the dungeon. Though the devs did a good job with dungeon pacing overall, I think perhaps this dungeon could have used a bit more refining. I mean, there's a room where you have to pop bubbles in a certain time frame. Nothing bad happens if you fail, rather the room resets and you try again. Like, okay, I guess? Sure, why not? Getting back into the game, it's finally time to return to Zelda with all 3 stones in hand. So we make our way to the castle. As we approach, the clouds thicken, night falls, and a storm whips up. Finally, we get to the gate. Suddenly, we see Impa sprinting away with Zelda. As Zelda flies past, she throws us her ocarina. Hot on our heels comes Ganondorf himself. No longer disguising his attempt to seize power, he's full-on chasing Zelda. However, he spies us, and decides to have a little sport first. We stand up to him, he laughs, then blasts us out of the way with magic. He rides away after Zelda, and we head into the Temple of Time. There we place all 3 stones in their places, play Zelda's lullaby, and this opens the door, and we find the Master Sword. Heading to it, we pull it, and immediately are cocooned in blue magic. However, Ganondorf decided to follow us, and entered the Sacred Realm through the door we opened. With that, he was able to acquire the Triforce. We wake up in a magical realm and meet Rauru. He introduces himself as an ancient sage who built the Temple of Time to protect the entrance to the sacred realm. He brought us into the Chamber of the Sages in the Temple of Light to protect us from Ganondorf. He then informs us that the Master Sword is the last sacred key to the sacred realm. We then realize how much time has passed and that we are a big boy now. He tells us that the Master Sword is a sacred blade that evil cannot touch. Looking at you, Tears of the Kingdom. Only the hero of time could have pulled it from the pedestal. However, even though we are the hero of time, we were too young at the time to be the hero of time. So he sealed us away for a time so that in time we could become the hero of time. So after we pulled the Master Sword, we effectively opened the door to the sacred realm that Ganondorf could walk through. With that, he claimed the Triforce, and the only way to stop him now is to awaken the 5 other sages, and combining everyone's power, they could seal Ganondorf away in the sacred realm. I want to stop here and talk about Ganondorf. He is a brilliant adversary. He has been given a very clear motivation, acquired the Triforce to become the king of the world. He knows what he needs to achieve his ends, the 3 stones and the Ocarina. So he starts applying pressure on the races, withholding the stones from him. If Link had not gone after the green stone, the Deku Tree would have died and Ganondorf could have taken the stone unopposed. If Link had not cleared out Dodongo's cavern, the Gorons would have starved to death, and once again Ganon could have taken the stone easily. If Link had not cleansed Jabu Jabu, then he might have turned on the Zoras, enabling Ganon to take the blue stone amidst the chaos. Every step of the way, Ganondorf is calculating the best method to reach his goals. He's not trying to win through sheer brute force. Rather, he's waiting for his enemies to be destroyed so that he can easily sweep in after the fact. And with him reaching the sacred realm, once again he shows his cunning wit. While he was chasing Zelda, he could have kept riding after her. He might have eventually caught her, but he realized he was wasting his time with that. Instead, he breaks off the chase and returned to the shadows and waited for Link to open the door for him. Once again, he is waiting for his foes to give him what he wants through manipulation. And honestly, I miss this version of Ganon. Most other Ganons have been brutish, animalistic forces of nature looking to win through sheer power alone. This is perhaps the wisest Ganon has ever been. Next, I want to talk about the elephant in the room of Raru's plan. On first glance, Raru's plan seems pretty dumb. I mean, seal away the hero who can stop Ganondorf while leaving the door open to the Triforce? Who does that? But upon further writing, I think this is actually a bit of clever writing. See, due to Ganondorf's pressure on the races of Hyrule, they would have to forfeit their stone sooner rather than later. Link came in the nick of time and got them before Ganondorf could. If Link had not acted, Ganondorf would have won. However, as Rauru said, Link was not strong enough to stop Ganondorf, rather we only delayed him. So rather than us opening the door to the Triforce and Rauru taking away Ganondorf's only obstacle, Link was positioned to follow Ganondorf to be able to defeat him eventually. Link could not have kept Ganondorf from the Triforce, so Rauru saved Link and did the only thing that would help Link defeat Ganondorf later. Though if I have to nitpick this section for something, I wish the sages were introduced earlier. As the game stands, there's such a divide between the child storyline and the adult storyline that it almost feels like you're playing 2 different games. Rauru and the sages come out of left field, and I wish the devs did a little to hint at their inclusion early on, rather than blindsiding the player. Anyway, we are Old Link now, so let's get cracking on the story. Returning to the land of Hyrule, we meet a new character called Sheik. He says he's been waiting for us, and he knows of our mission to awaken the sages. He gives the location of the other sages, then points us towards Saria in the forest. After leaving the Temple of Time, we witness firsthand Ganondorf's destruction of Hyrule. Where once there was singing in the streets, people dancing, plants blooming, and children playing, now there is just ruins. All of the people have been turned into re-deads. Nothing is growing. The buildings are destroyed. And due to the smoke coming from Ganon's castle, sunlight never shines on the town. So, to get to the forest, we must first head to Kakariko Village. After defiling some graves and killing the Draugr that live in there, we find Dampy. He challenges us to a race, and upon winning, we get the claw shot. On our way out of Dampy's grave, we move some boxes through the power of song, then learn the Song of Storms. With item in hand, we head into the Kokiri Forest. There we see that the Deku Babas and Deku Scrubs have taken over the town, though the general store is still open. We make our way deeper into the Lost Woods, avoiding the light and following the darkness. Eventually, we come to the Sacred Grove and use the claw shot to kill some giants. After reaching the entrance to the temple, Sheik stops us. He laments on the cruelty of time, then teaches us the Minuet of Forest so that we can warp back to the temple if need be. She then pulls a and vanishes, so we head into the temple proper. Grappling back to the beginning of this section, I want to draw attention to the difference between child and adult Link. When you're a child, everything has a cheerful, upbeat, happy-go-lucky atmosphere. Yes, there are some darker moments in the dungeons, but nothing is made frightening on purpose. And I think this was a smart move by the developers. Nothing really prepares you for the gut punch of ruined Hyrule Castle Town. Everything has been colorful and bright, but the moment you walk into the ruined castle town, you're immediately struck by the pure evil that has corrupted this once happy city. Next, I want to talk about the Song of Storms. In this game, you learn the Song of Storms from a man in a windmill. He claims to have learned it from a kid with an ocarina years ago. We later realize that we were the kid who taught him the song. But we could only teach him the song because we first learned it from him, who learned it from us, who learned it from him, who learned it from us. This song is an unfortunate time loop in an otherwise solid game about time travel. It's a cool song though. Finally, I want to point out the attention to detail in the Kokiri Forest. If you meet some of the Kokiri children, they don't recognize you as an adult. The devs could very easily have left the original dialogue from when you were a kid, but instead they took the time to code in new dialogue for if you're an adult versus a kid. Back to the game, we're finally at the Forest Temple. So first hold on. Looks like I got some more hate comments from my Tears of the Kingdom review. Dark Ripper UK is going to cover things here while I go take care of this. Be back in a minute.
Well, while Mr. Yobo gets that sorted out, you've got me for a moment. Hey there, I'm Dark Ripper UK. I make content on VR games, but before VR gaming, a long time ago, I used to play all the games that I could, and one of my favourites growing up was this one. It's been over 20 years since I last played The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and even after all that time, there is one part of the game that's still etched in my memory more than any other: the Forest Temple. Specifically, the section when you return to the area as adult Link. I think it stuck with me so strongly because it was one of the most challenging parts of the game for me back then, and probably one of the most rewarding too. You've got to remember, this was the late 90s. There weren't video walkthroughs on YouTube, no Google searches for puzzle solutions. If you got stuck, you were stuck. Your best hope was maybe a friend at school who had gotten a bit further than you, or waiting patiently for the next issue of a gaming magazine like Games Master, which might include a guide for the bit that you were struggling with, and that was only if your local newsagent hadn't already sold out. So, when I became adult Link and had to head back to the forest, I wasn't even sure if I was supposed to go back there at first. That sense of uncertainty made the whole journey feel a bit odd. When I finally figured out that the Forest Temple was the next destination, I remember feeling a weird mix of excitement and dread. Because I knew from the moment I stepped back into Kokiri Forest that this wasn't going to be a quick visit. What really got me was the Lost Woods, The name wasn't kidding. I got so unbelievably lost in there before. I could never quite wrap my head around the pattern of the paths. No matter how many times I tried to remember the sequence, it never stuck. I'd take the wrong turn, get booted back to the start, and try again. Eventually, I got so frustrated that I grabbed a sheet of paper and literally started drawing a map by hand. Just sketching out the different paths as I went, tracking which ones led where. It was like I was turning the game into a real-life dungeon crawl. Pen, paper, and persistence. It was that kind of effort, that trial and error, that made progress feel earned. There was no shortcut, no hints, just patience, observation, and a lot of determination. And once I'd finally got through the woods, I found myself facing the forest temple itself, which was another kind of maze entirely to start with. Creepy, confusing, and full of tricks. It all felt incredibly atmospheric. And again, I found myself getting lost, backtracking, trying to make sense of the layout. I spent a lot of time in there, not just playing, but thinking, trying to work out what I'd missed, or where to go next. And that was something I really loved about the Ocarina of Time. It made you pay attention. You couldn't just rush through it. You had to explore, to listen to the dialogue, to remember what people had said even hours earlier. It respected your intelligence, even when it was challenging. It expected you to be an adventurer, not just a player. Sometimes, when I got really stuck, I just have to put the controller down and take a break. Not out of rage, well, not always, but just to clear my head. I'd go off, do something else, let my brain settle, and more often than not, when I came back, something would click. That break would help me piece things together, and I'd make progress again. It taught me that sometimes walking away is part of moving forward, which is honestly something I've carried with me outside of gaming too. Looking back, the Forest Temple wasn't just a level in a game. Working up to it was a challenge, a personal puzzle. And when I finally made it through, solved everything, and played the next melody on the ocarina, it felt like a real accomplishment. Not just in the game, but in my own persistence as a kid trying to figure it all out. That whole experience, getting lost, drawing maps, taking breaks, solving it in my own time, it burned itself into my subconscious. It is why Ocarina of Time remains one of my all-time favourite childhood games. Not just because of the story or the graphics or gameplay, though all of those were brilliant from what I remember, but because of the feeling it gave me. That sense of wonder, frustration, and eventual triumph. It felt like my adventure. And that's a memory that will never fade. Well, it looks like Mr. Yobo has got things sorted out. So, here you go, sir.
Big thanks to Dark Ripper UK for holding down the fort while I was occupied. Anyway, I'm back. So continuing with the game, we are once again pointed towards Death Mountain. So we head back to Goron Village, blow up a Goron, and he tells us to head into the Fire Temple to help his dad defeat a dragon. We also learn that every single Goron besides him and Big Goron were taken into the Fire Temple by Ganondorf's followers. He gives us a heat-resistant tunic, then we head inside the volcano. Inside said volcano, we meet Sheik again. He talks about friendship growing over time, then teaches us the Bolero of Fire. Then flashbangs us, then we finally head into the Fire Temple. Inside the Fire Temple, we meet Darunia. He wants to talk to us, but before he can, he needs to beat Volvagia. He worries about not having the hammer, but claims not to have a choice and heads in, tasking us with saving his people. So we wander through the dungeon, letting out the scared Gorons who try to be helpful in their own way, then finally come to the mini-boss. After a silly fight, we ascend to the heavens, walk a fine line, then get the banhammer. Finally, we free all the Gorons and head in to face Volvagia. He flies out of the holes in the ground, we give him a headache that even my doll can't fix, then he has enough of our crap and dies. We get our heart container, then warp to the Chamber of the Sages. Death Mountain erupts, and all of the corruption leaves it. Inside the sage's chamber, we see Darunia awakened as a sage of fire. He tells us we turned out to be a real man, just like he thought we would. Says nothing makes him happier than helping us seal the evil. He then gives us the Medallion of Fire. In closing, he asks us not to forget that we are true brothers. With that, the Fire Temple is done. Reflecting on this section, I want to praise Nintendo for adding a fun mechanic that's consistent with the story. All the Gorons you free try to help you in return. As they have nothing to give you, they give you information instead. This is a great way of helping the player through the dungeon while also making the Gorons more endearing. I also want to use this moment to talk about the music. Many games from this era had okay music, but usually nothing to write home about. I mean, how many Spyro the Dragon or Crash Bandicoot songs can you remember? However, this game is different. Each track is unique. Each area has its own special music that many people fondly remember today. I mean, with tracks like Hyrule Field, Gerudo Valley, and Ganon's organ song, and others, I never found myself bored of the music. Back to the game, next up is it's the Water Temple. A chill wind is coming from Zora's domain. Heading there, we find everything frozen over, including all of the Zora. We head into the nearby ice cave, bottle some bluebell flames, then thaw the king. He gives us the blue tunic so that we can swim underwater without drowning. After that, we head back to the past, learn Epona's song, head back to the future, win Epona from Waluigi, then head to Lake Hylia. There we see all of the water has dried up, and the lake is only a shadow of its former self. Heading down into the water, we see the entrance to the temple is gated off, and we have to activate a switch to get in. But we need to use the iron boots to use the hookshot underwater to activate the switch. And the iron boots are back in the ice cave. So back to the ice caves I go. We go back in, head deeper, and enter a trippy room where we smush some wolves. Then Sheik appears, tells us that all the Zora except Ruto are frozen under the ice, and that we must defeat the Water Temple boss to thaw the ice to save the Zora. She flashbangs us, we head back to Lake Hylia, open the doors, and finally make it into the Water Temple. Inside the Water Temple, after getting lost a few times, backtracking a lot, missing keys, and just generally hating having to switch gear every 5 steps, we come to the mini-boss room. Honestly, the Dark Link fight is my favorite mini-boss fight from perhaps the entire Zelda series. The setup to it, where you lose your shadow over the island, is immaculate. The fight itself makes you think, as Dark Link mirrors your movements, unless you use the banhammer. Even the subtle jibe at you when Dark Link stands on your sword is intimidating. Here is an enemy that spamming will not work on. You must instead use skill in combat to win the day. Or the banhammer. After he's defeated, and after a lot more lost wanderings, we finally come to the boss. Here we have to fight an amoeba. So we suck out its heart with a hookshot and then slash it a bunch. It dies, we get our crystal, and head back into the sage's chamber. There we learn that Ruto is the water sage. She wants to give us her eternal love, but reckons that can't happen now that she is a sage for the rest of eternity. She gives us the blue medallion, the lake returns to normal, and she congratulates us. With that, the Water Temple is done. Thank goodness. I want to pause here and discuss this opening. This here, I think, perfectly shows an issue that I've had with a lot of Zelda games, not just this one. Something that I like to call late game bloat. In the early levels or dungeons, often you can get to them pretty quickly. This is most likely done because the devs don't want to overwhelm new players with info too fast. But as a side effect, players can feel like they're flying through the earlier stages. As you near the halfway point, the path to get to some dungeons lengthens, but not by much. Then usually, roughly halfway or 2/3 of the way through the game, the journey to get to the dungeons gets really long and complicated out of nowhere. For instance, the Water Temple, and later the Spirit Temple. Instead of clearly making progress towards the temples and your goal, you now have to go through numerous steps that oftentimes feel disjointed in order to get in. First, you head to Zora's Domain to see what's up. Then you head into the ice caves to get the iron boots. Because why wouldn't steel boots be in a frozen cave? Then you have to thaw the king so that he gives you a tunic. Then you have to go back in time to learn a song from Malon. Then you have to go forward in time to play the song in front of Waluigi to surprise him with Epona's friendship. Then you have to race Waluigi twice to win Epona from him, then escape the farm. Then you can ride over to Lake Hylia, jump the fences, and finally get into the temple. Compare that with the Fire Temple that we went through just before this one, where you had to stop a rolling Goron to get a red tunic, move a rock, and bam, you're in. It's just baffling why these later dungeons get so convoluted. Like, it feels like the devs were in the middle of making this game, then suddenly realized towards the end that their game was a bit short, so they just started throwing in crap to lengthen the playtime. Like, I'd rather the game be a bit shorter but more straightforward. This gets even worse in Majora's Mask, but I'll cover that game eventually. Probably. Maybe, I don't know. Next thing I want to cover is the temple itself. Honestly, the hate for this dungeon is completely justified. It's incredibly long, very convoluted, every wall looks the exact same, and since you can't even lower the water level without first raising it fully, it's easy to forget what you were doing in the middle of changing the water height. I also heard someone talk before about this dungeon, saying another issue with it is the constant need to pause the game to change equipment. Most previous dungeons, you had to pause the game to pull out a different item, maybe 10 times total. But here, you often have to pause the game, equip the iron boots, unpause, walk 10 paces, pause the game, unequip the iron boots, unpause, float up, walk to the next room, pause the game, equip the iron boots, unpause the game, walk 10 paces, pause the game, unequip the iron boots, pause the game, and repeat ad nauseum. The constant stopping and starting can make this dungeon really drag. Coupled with keys that you can visit but can't unlock until much later, and a water level that takes 5 minutes to lower instead of raise, and you'll most likely spend most of your time completely lost and exploring the same path numerous times. Plus, this dungeon is very circular. For instance, on this playthrough, trying to do it without a walkthrough, I lowered the water level all the way down, found some keys, raised the water level to the middle, unlocked a few doors, then raised it all the way back up, and realized I had accomplished absolutely nothing. For 20 minutes of work, I had ended up back at the start of the dungeon with no keys to show for it, no dungeon item, no map, no compass, no boss key. I had put in 20 minutes of my life just to end up exactly where I started. Back to the game, next up is the Spirit Temple. So, to begin that quest, I head back in time and enter the Kakariko Village Windmill. There we play the Song of Storms, turn the windmill faster, and drain the water level. Even though windmills are often used to pull up water instead of pushing it down, but whatever. Video game logic. So we head back into the well and enter the bottom of the well dungeon. This dungeon is rather long and complicated, but in reality you can bypass 95% of it and just grab the Lens of Truth. Anyway, after beating Dead Hand, we get the lens. So now we head into the Gerudo Desert. After grappling across the broken bridge, we meet a carpenter. He's upset that his entire crew has left him to go join the Gerudo thieves. He tasks us with heading into their hideout to free them. So we head in, get captured ourselves, and thrown into jail. With that, we are in the Gerudo thieves' hideout. So we get out by... 1 second. My apologies, but it looks like I have a few more hate comments on my Tears of the Kingdom review to sort out. Dark VR Night will cover things this time while I'm gone. I'll be right back again.
Well, while Mr. Yobo is laying some smackdowns on those hate comments, I'm gonna take over for a little bit. I am the Dark VR Knight. I make VR content, some with Mr. Yobo, and he invited me to talk about my favorite level of Ocarina of Time. Before we get into that, I want to set up the story of why this game has a special place in my heart, and then I'll tell you about the level I chose. So it was always cool. 1998, I came home from high school, and there it was. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time sitting on my desk in my room. My dad worked for himself, he had his own business, so a lot of times when a game would come out, I'd ask him, and if he had time, he'd pick it up and drop it right there on the table and head back out to work. So I would have the game to play. And I started playing the game, and oh man, I was just blown away. It was an amazing game. I could picture almost every just level and scene in my head. It's just burned vividly. That was one of the few games that I played multiple times over and over. But it's been a long time, so I'm assuming I'm gonna forget some names and things as I talk about it. But it was just a great game overall. So the one thing I loved, and my buddy was a genius ahead of his time, he actually liked watching people play games. I'd go over to his house and I would start playing a game. I'm like, dude, do you want to play? Nah, man, it's cool. I like watching you play it. Okay, interesting. But that wasn't a thing. YouTube didn't come out till like 4 years later, I think 2001, and this was 1998. So when I got the game, I was like, dude, you got to come over and watch this. He's like, I can't, man. Can you try and record it on a VHS tape? Yeah, a VHS tape. That's how we used to record TV back then. No DVRs, no digital, storage devices back then. Just straight up, just a VHS tape. And it worked. But in this scenario, I could not get it to work. I think I tried a week, tried to record, plug it in tried different VCRs. Nothing worked because I realized now that I didn't know then is that they had pass-throughs to do that, but the pass-through would not allow the image to go through the VHS. It was just straight through and out back to the TV. That's all it was. So it never actually was able to record at the time, or at least my VHS player, what was on screen with a device like that. So that failed, but like I said, he was ahead of his time. Now, talking about the game itself, there was a lot of firsts for me in this game, and one or a couple of them were from the Gerudo village or fortress area. So the first time I experienced that level, I had an idea I thought was crazy. I thought, it won't work, you can't do this. Well, as you approach the bridge, it's torn down, so you can't get in there because you're adult Link at this time, and the bridge is gone, Back to the Future style, and so you have to cross it. So you got one of two ways. At the time, I only thought there was one way. Use a hook shot, pull yourself across, leave Epona back there, wait until you get done. Well, I had a crazy idea. Didn't think it would work. I'm like, well, what if I try and jump the horse? Is that a thing? Well, I tried on the side of the bridge where the cliff just ends, and she stopped and, wouldn't let me go. So I'm like, well, let me just try through the middle. I was saying to myself, this is not going to work, but hell, just do it. Could be fun. I tried it, and when she leapt through the air, I just got goosebumps and just was so excited, and I think I hit pause and had to go tell my brother or somebody. I remember running around. I'm like, you're not gonna believe this. You could jump the horse across the bridge. And I was just freaking out because it was something that I thought of that I could actually do in a game. That's probably why I love Bootstrap Island. A shameless plug for my channel. I just love that idea. So the next thing I absolutely love about the level is the music. The score that was written is just, I think it's one of the greatest tunes. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I've always liked that. I could hear it now. Do-do-do, 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 do-do-do. I just got stuck in my head. It's just there. I've always remembered that, always loved that sound, and absolutely love that level even more because of that soundtrack that they have with it. But moving on, when you go into that level, I loved it so much because it kind of added an element of being sneaky, right? You could sneak around those thieves, and before you get into their hideout, you would usually encounter a couple of them out in the open or sometimes in some hallways. And what was nice is you could take out your bow and arrow and take them out and never have to actually deal with them. So that was really cool. And then when you got into the thieves' hideout, you would fight one of the thieves. They would drop a key. You'd let one of the carpenters out, rinse and repeat. And you had, I think, 4 in total to help in that area. But it was fun. You traveled around. You went up different levels, different heights. It was just kind of like a wonky pyramid in a sense, if you want to say. But yeah, it was a great game. I absolutely loved it. Gerudo Fortress is one of my favorite levels for Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So let's hand it back to Mr. Yobo, as I think he's done laying those smackdowns from all those mean commenters. Like, come on, guys. Take it easy.
Many thanks to Dark VR Knight for helping out there. That should be the last of them. Anyway, back to the game. After beating the hideout, we head into the desert proper. First, we grapple across the river of sand. Next, we follow the ghost guide with the lens of truth. Finally, we make it to the desert colossus. We head inside but find that both directions are blocked, one by a tiny hole and the other by a massive boulder. Seeing as we cannot progress here, we head outside and talk to Sheik. He tells us how to become small, then teaches us the Requiem of Spirit to get back to the temple. After an awkward stare down, he fades into the sandstorm. We warp back to the Temple of Time, become small, then head back to the Colossus. I want to here repeat a point I made during the Water Temple section, that of late game bloat. It's really obvious here. We have to complete not 1, but 2 full-on mini-dungeons. That combined can take hours, especially if you get lost in the Gerudo Thieves' hideout like I did. Then cross the desert. Like, why? The bottom of the well dungeon is neat and all, and introduces you to the power of the lens, but right after I had beaten it, I realized that I was wasting a fair amount of time doing everything simply because I didn't go through the right door to get the lens. You don't get anything else for beating the dungeon, and as far as I know, you can simply duck in, get the lens, and leave in 5 minutes without any harm or foul. I mean, with the ice caves, I had to explore to the end of the dungeon to get the iron boots to progress, but here you can bypass everything, making me wonder why this dungeon was included in the first place. And with this section, in the amount of time it took me to get to the Spirit Temple, I could have beaten both the Deku Tree dungeons and Dodongo's caverns, and been halfway through Jabu Jabu's dungeon. By count of dungeons, beating the Forest Temple is the halfway point, but by sheer gameplay length, really the last 2 dungeons and Ganon's Tower make up more than half of the entire playtime. One lesson that many game devs need to learn is that more is not better. I mean, these sections are fun, but don't get me wrong, I do enjoy sneaking through the Gerudo hideout and the atmosphere of the bottom of the well. But at the same time, when it just starts to drag, atmosphere kind of wears thin a little bit. Another question I have is, why can't Sheik save the dungeons? I mean, he's often one step ahead of me. Why can't he just run in, save the dungeon, then hand-link the required item and heart crystal? He has learned all the songs to warp to the dungeons before I ever got there, so reasonably Sheik was at all of these dungeons long before we ever arrived in order to learn the song. So Sheik went to these dungeons, saw that they were in trouble, and did nothing while he waited for Link? Why does Link have to be the one to awaken the sages instead of Sheik? Also, what's with Sheik telling us how to go back in time here? Like, we had to get Epona's song as a kid, so we had to head back in time to do that. We had to get the Lens of Truth to get to this point, and we had to head back in time to do that. Why tell me how to do something I already had to do to reach this point? It's like giving you the solution to a puzzle you already completed 15 minutes ago. Anyway, we now enter the dungeon as Small Link. Here we meet a Gerudo woman. She asks us what we're doing, and naturally we say nothing in particular. She then tasks us with heading into the small hole in order to retrieve the silver gauntlets. She says she needs them to sneak deeper into the Spirit Temple to spy on Ganondorf and his minions, who are inside the dungeon. She promises us that if we can bring her the treasure, she will richly reward us. So we head in. After beating up some monsters, getting a small key, and making a Sunface happy, we face off against our first Dark Nut. After dancing around him and threading our way through his attacks, he dies and we get the silver gauntlets. Here we talk to the owl for the final time in the game. After talking with him, we hear a cry from below and look down. Below, Twin Rova have found Naboru and are whisking her away. She calls to us and tells us to run while we still can, then vanishes. The witches head back into the temple cackling, and we head back to the Temple of Time to get big. Upon returning to the Spirit Temple as Old Link, we can now wear the silver gauntlets. With these, we can now hoik the boulder out of the way and enter the second half of the dungeon. We head in, killing monsters, getting small keys, and we find the mirror shield. With this, we can make so many sun faces happy. Heading deeper in, we face off against corrupted Naboru. She is trapped inside Dark Nut armor, but we have to defeat her to free her. After the battle, we head deeper in. We eventually come to the boss fight against Twin Rova. And honestly, this fight I would categorize as more ambitious than the technology the day could do. You have to reflect the beam attack from one sister with the mirror shield to hit the other sister. After a few hits, they pull a Dragon Ball Z fusion and join together into younger Twin Rova, who is very clearly designed by men. Now we have to charge up the shield with 3 of one type of attack, either fire or ice. We then shoot back the beam at her to stun her, then run over and slash her. After enough hits, Twin Rova separates, the sisters argue their way into the afterlife, we get our heart crystal, and enter the Sage's Chamber again. Here we awaken Naboru, who thanks us and remembers us as a kid. She sees the irony of being Ganondorf's slave, but now being the sage that will help Link fight against Ganondorf. She breaks her promise from long ago, the promise to reward us if we bring her the gauntlets, and instead gives us the Spirit Medallion. With that, the Spirit Temple is done and only one Sage dungeon is left. Shining some light on this section, I first want to acknowledge the interesting mechanic here. Instead of being a standard affair of entering, progressing through, and then beating the boss, instead you have to go through both halves of the dungeon, once as a kid and once as an adult. Both sides are unique, and the devs did a really good job of weaving the story and gameplay together here. And honestly, this is a nice change of pace from the standard enter dungeon, beat boss, ta-da. And I talked about it a little bit earlier, but Twin Rova is a cool boss in theory, but a bit poor in execution. The camera here not being a free camera really lets down this fight. You have to reflect the beam attack from one sister's mirror shield and hit the other sister. However, it's frustrating when the sister you're trying to hit casually flies behind you, so you can't hit her. Or you're standing near the edge of the platform to see both sisters, but suddenly the camera decides to focus on a speck on the floor instead of the fight, and you whiff your shot because you can't see anything. If the devs could have added some form of free camera and the ability to reposition the shield to a wider angle, this fight would have been one of the best fights in the game, but as it stands, it's just too clunky to be good. And after the final conversation with Rauru the Owl, I'm left asking one question. Did we really need him in the game? He definitely feels like a tutorial to help children along, but what does he contribute to things? he never comes with big bouts of exposition. He never really moves the story along. He just kind of serves to point you in the right direction. Something that both Navi and Sheik do, and Saria once you learn Saria's song. So I'm left wondering, why was he included? Now it is time for the last Sage Dungeon. First, we become Baby Link again, then get Din's Fire. We then get big and head back to Kakariko Village. Here, everything is on fire. Sheik is staring at a well. He then tells us to get back just before getting flung around in the air. A haze flies out of the well, then comes for us. When we come to, the fires have been extinguished, and Sheik tells us that the Shadow Spirit has been released. Impa has gone to the Shadow Temple to seal it again, but we must help her. We learn the Nocturne of Shadow to warp to the temple and head on our way. So we head into the temple, use Din's Fire to light all the torches to open the door, and hear 10 times in a row that we should really get the Lens of Truth if you want to progress. As we head deeper, we come across Dead Hand again. However, since he has no new tactics in this fight, he dies quickly and we get the Hover Boots. A little later, we beat up a Redead and some bats, then are rewarded with the map. Heading back to the main room, we spin a statue and float across the gap. We head in deeper, beating up mummies, dodging guillotines, and using the Lens of Truth to realize just about every other wall is fake. Finally, we come to Karen's cruise ship, play Zelda's Lullaby to set off, then head in to fight Bongo Bongo. We use the Lens of Truth to see him, stun both hands, then slash his peeper a bunch. He dies, we get the Heart Crystal, and head to the Sage's Chamber for the last time. Here we awaken Impa as the final Sage. She gives us some backstory to the Sheikah, and explains that 7 years ago, Ganon attacked Hyrule Castle. Hyrule Castle was not able to weather his onslaught, so they surrendered quickly. He was hunting the Ocarina of Time, and Impa's duty forced her to whisk Zelda away. She tells us that the princess is safe, and that we'll meet her soon. She tasks us with taking over her role as princess's protector, and we get our medallion. With that, all sages are collected. It's now time to fight Ganon. Bringing my own Lens of Truth here to bear on this section, I must say that it really feels like the devs ran out of steam here. As opposed to the penultimate and anti-penultimate dungeons, this one feels way too straightforward. There's no long drawn-out quest to get here, which I appreciate, but inside the dungeon, you can get the map, compass, and boss item incredibly quickly. Like, walk into a room just off of the main room, defeat 3 enemies, and ta-da, you get it. Like, the previous dungeons felt creative and unique. This one just feels bland, for lack of a better term. However, I will say that the game absolutely nails the atmosphere here. Everything is spooky, the rooms get bigger and taller the deeper you go in, and the boss itself is creepy. What this dungeon lacks in complexity, it definitely makes up for in atmosphere. Though again, as the last dungeon, this one feels like it's lacking. I would have greatly appreciated if they built off of everything we learned in the previous dungeons, like lighting torches to unlock doors, rusty buttons needing to be hammered, using the hookshot to cross gaps, etc. Instead, there are a few block puzzles and an eyeball or two you need to shoot, but other than that, it's a pretty straightforward dungeon. Like, I wish this one was the capstone, the pinnacle of Ocarina of Time dungeons. Instead, it just feels like another dungeon. With all that though, all of the sages are awakened. The Elder Sage tells us it's time to head to the Temple of Time to meet the one who is waiting for us. So we do. There, you better
get yourself ready for some reading.
There we meet Sheik. He tells us the story of the Triforce. We are told that the Sacred Realm is a reflection of the heart. If an evil heart enters the Sacred Realm, then it'll become a place of evil. But vice versa, if a good heart enters, it'll be good. We learn that the Triforce balances wisdom, power, and courage. If one holds all three elements in balance in their heart, they can claim the Triforce. But if not, whatever element that person values most will decide which piece of the Triforce they get. The other two pieces will then seek out those who value their element the most. Ganondorf, when he reached the Triforce, only received the piece of power, as that was what he valued most. Link received the piece of courage, and one other received the piece of wisdom. Now we learn the big reveal that Sheik, the one who's been helping us all this time, is actually Zelda. She has disguised herself to avoid Ganon's capture. She is the wielder of the Triforce of Wisdom. 7 years ago, Ganon attacked Hyrule Castle and Zelda saw us as she fled. She thought to entrust the Ocarina to us as a best hope of protecting it. She thought that as long as we held the Triforce, Ganon could never enter the Sacred Realm. However, she never imagined that we would be sealed away for 7 years and that Ganon could invade behind us and claim the Triforce. Zelda, in disguise, then awaited our return. But now that we have returned, the Dark Age of Ganondorf can come to an end. The 6 sages will open the door to the realm and lure Ganondorf back in. Zelda will then seal Ganondorf in the Sacred Realm from our side. She just needs us to protect her and to weaken Ganon while she does this. We are then given the Bow of Light. But immediately after, Ganon traps Zelda. He commends her for avoiding him for 7 years. However, he was playing the long con, and he knew that she would reveal herself once we returned. Ganondorf then admits that his only mistake was to slightly underestimate our abilities. Zelda is whisked away and we head into Hyrule Castle to rescue her. First, I want to commend Nintendo for making Zelda such a strong yet wise character. During this entire story, she was doing everything she could and everything she thought was right. She pointed Link towards the stones to stop Ganon from getting them. She gave us the Ocarina to keep it away from Ganon. She stayed hidden for 7 years, disguised as Sheik, thwarting him where she could. Every step of the way, she acted with both wisdom and courage. And unlike Tears of the Kingdom, her strength in no way diminishes any character around her, especially Link. Everyone in this story is working as hard as they can, and this makes for some fantastic writing. Next is the Sacred Realm itself. Honestly, I appreciate Nintendo not going into detail about it. We know it's an ethereal place just beyond the borders of our world. We know that we can get into and out of it through certain doors. We know the Triforce is located there, and that the realm can change based on the heart of the one who enters it. But beyond that, we know nothing. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know if the same laws of physics apply there. We don't even know who lives there. We are given enough information to make the story work, but none more than we need. And that is good storytelling, because our minds will always fill in the gaps better than what any actual answer can give. Finally, Zelda's plan. I first want to congratulate the game on making it very clear why we assembled all the sages. At the beginning of our sage acquisition journey, we hear that we need them all to stop Ganon. Now we learn why we need all of them to stop Ganon. Next, even though the plan involves the Sacred Realm and magical doors, everything is laid out clear enough for the player to understand. We need to work together with all of the sages to take down Ganondorf. No one could do this alone, but everyone combined is just strong enough to do it. And I know I said it earlier, but this Ganondorf is hands down the best Ganondorf out of any Zelda game. He is incredibly wise and cunning, and he will use either force or manipulation to achieve his ends, whichever works best. He is portrayed as an actual threat, and we see numerous times that we cannot beat him alone. I don't know what happened to this Ganondorf in later games, but I wish Nintendo would bring him back. Now it's time to head into Ganon's castle. As we approach, we hear Rauru, the sage, tell us that he and the other sages will build the bridge that we need to get across. So they make the Rainbow Road and we enter the castle proper. First, we take down the orange seal, then purple, then blue, then green, then yellow, then red. All barriers go down and we are free to climb the tower. We make our way up, battling through enemies as we go. The music volume crescendos until we reach the very top. So we unlock the whoops, 1 second. I forgot the key. So we unlock the door. There we see Ganondorf himself playing the organ. Zelda is trapped just above him. Ganon stops playing, and he remarks that the Triforce is united once again, though he never expected the pieces to be hid in Zelda or Link. Finally, though, he has them all gathered. He demands the Triforce pieces back. We get surrounded by waves of darkness, and Navi tells us we are on our own. Now, just like the Phantom Ganon fight, we have to play tennis for our very lives. We do battle with him, batting back his attacks. We stun him, then break through his defenses with light arrows, then hack away with the Master Sword. Finally, he collapses to the floor. Wheezing, he can't believe we beat him. He then goes Super Saiyan and blows off the top of the tower. But in his death, he brings down the tower around us as one last attempt to kill us. We flee down the tower, battling our way back down. But we make it to the exit and watch as Ganon's castle, the symbol of his power and rule, crumbles to dust. We look over the ruins, and Zelda remarks that it is finally over. Navi apologizes for not being able to help us during the fight. But as we're congratulating each other, a noise rumbles from the ruins. Suddenly, a flame ring blazes up, cutting us off from Zelda. Ganon rises from the wreckage. Claiming the power of the Triforce, he transforms into Dark Beast Ganon, as one last desperate gasp to take us down. He swipes his sword and knocks the Master Sword out of our hands. Now swordless, we must face down the final boss. So we use light arrows to stun him, then smush his tail with a hammer. We dodge and weave his attacks, finally deal enough damage to bring him to his knees. The flame wall goes down and we run and grab our sword. But before we can finish him off, he rises to his feet again and the battle resumes. We duck, we dodge, and fill him full of light arrows. Finally, he succumbs to his wounds and collapses again. We slash his face once, twice, 3 times, then end it all by stabbing him in the head. He writhes in pain and staggers back. The sages jump in and seize their chance, and with Zelda's help, seal him in the Sacred Realm. But with one last gasp, Ganon curses Zelda, the sages, and us. He vows that he will return when the seal is broken, and he will wipe out our descendants. He reminds us that he still holds the Triforce of Power, but then is lost in the Sacred Realm. Zelda and Link teleport to the sky. There, Zelda thanks us for all that we did, and for enabling her and the sages to seal away Ganon. Now peace will return to Hyrule, for a time. She then weeps, for she says that all the tragedy that came to Hyrule was her fault. She laments her youth at the time, and her misguided desire to control the Sacred Realm before Ganon could. She weeps over the fact that she dragged us into this adventure, but tells us that she will make it up to us. We must return the Master Sword to its pedestal and seal the Door of Time. However, upon doing this, we won't be able to visit the future anymore. She takes the ocarina back and sends us back to our youth, home where we are supposed to be, the way we are supposed to be. As she plays, we are teleported away, and she thanks us one more time. We return to the Temple of Time as a child, and Navi takes off through the window, leaving us to be a child once again. Bells ring out joyously, and we get one last shot of the Master Sword. Then we see the scene that started this whole adventure, Link spying Zelda looking through the window of the throne room. With that, the game comes to a close. Honestly, this is a great game. The story is fantastically written. The characters are wholly fleshed out and well written. The gameplay, for the most part, is enjoyable, challenging, yet rewarding. The puzzles, while complex, hardly ever felt nonsensical or absurd. Each area of the map is well defined and stylized. The music is mostly sublime. For many people, this game is the benchmark to compare the rest of the Zelda series to. The final battle makes you feel epic, yet the ending is truly bittersweet. And honestly, even though this game has its problems, and it does have problems, I would gladly take this over most any game put out today. It may be 27 years old, but it's definitely still a must-play. Thank you so much for watching, and big thanks to both Dark Ripper UK and Dark VR Knight for agreeing to appear in this video. Their channels will be linked in the description, go show them some love. Honestly though, I had so much fun putting this review together and playing the game. This review is a bit harder for me though, as I know both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom better, but didn't really know this game as well. But hopefully I did it some justice, while being honest about its shortcomings. But anyway, with Ocarina of Time out of the way, the next Zelda game I'm going to review is Twilight Princess. This is the first Zelda game that I ever completed from start to finish. I even got the magic armor. I mean, I was young, well, younger, and didn't know how bad it was. Plus, I have fond memories playing the HD remake on the Wii, exploring Hyrule and covering the story. Plus, there are a lot of connections to Ocarina of Time that'll be fun to dive into. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for my next Zelda review, and I shall see you all in the next one. Take care.